This is the Aftermarket Radio Network.
Welcome to another episode of Speak Up Effective Communication, the show on the Aftermarket Radio Network focused on our communication and leadership skills. And in our episode today, my mistake, I'm sorry. Yes, this is about apologies. Here's the thing. If there is something any of us have in common, it is this. We make mistakes. We drop balls, forget details, we make assumptions. We miss details, misspeak, misjudge. In auto repair, the potential errors are staggering. We misdiagnose, misplace, mistorque, we misquote, mistype, and okay, you get it. Look, acknowledging this is in the abstract, or at least in any kind of collective sense, is actually really simple. But in this episode, I believe we need to get more comfortable with I statements on this topic. When mistakes do happen, and they will, I don't believe in collective guilt. I am a much bigger fan of what I would call individual responsibility. Key to effective communication is personal accountability. Organizations, teams, businesses, we actually use this we language in most of our communications. And this is kind of when things are going well, that really works nicely for us. But the word we in successful times, I think that's expressing a shared sense of that victory. And that's a humble and good thing. The word we in incidents, however, is more like hiding. Leaders must take accountability. And so the I language does need to come into this equation. There's some great quotes on this, and we'll touch on a few different things. But one of those things is, I believe there's a really great book. It's called The Question Behind the Question, What to Really Ask Yourself, Practicing Personal Accountability in Business and in Life. That's just one of several books I'll reference in this episode. But even within the back cover of this book, it just has this great little line that indicates that I'm a firm believer in a team concept, but if we're not careful, we can end up substituting the language of teams, we and us, for the language of personal accountability. We can hide behind the team with thoughts which become excuses. And there's more to that. Now, in this episode, as in every episode, I do have a word of the day. The word of the day today is one that we used in my local Toastmasters club. We used the word adroit the other night. That means, well, I'll tell you what it means after we hear a word from our sponsors. Looking to take your shop to the next level of quality service, team culture, and overall profitability? At the Institute, we provide personalized coaching that aligns with your goals of financial stability, excellent customer service, and employee satisfaction. Our priority is helping you establish significant and sustainable progress. We work with you to create strategies that reduce the stress of running your business, improve your quality and performance, and optimize your profitability. Experience the benefits of professional coaching by visiting wearetheinstitute.com/business-assessment. Hey friends, as you know, I'm a proud member of the AutoFlow team, and let me tell you, we've changed how business is done for auto shops everywhere. We support your client experience before, during, and after the work is done. Imagine this. Timely updates sent directly to your clients, branded digital vehicle inspections, and seamless communication from start to finish. That's why shops love AutoFlow. And hey, with those 5-star reviews rolling in, you'll wonder how you ever managed without us. Take an important next step and take your auto shop to the next level. Visit www.autoflow.com. Get on board with an AutoFlow trial. Want to see your auto repair shop thrive? Are you looking to drive more customers to your auto repair shop? Let ShopDog Marketing be your guide. Our customer-first approach, combined with AI-driven creative content, ensures top rankings. Dominate mobile first and voice search with our specialized expertise. Reach out to ShopDog Marketing today and start growing your business. Don't miss out on this chance to boost your business. Visit shopdogmarketing.com. Inbound has exclusively served independent auto repair shops with expert communication solutions for years. Our robust VoIP platform ensures you stay connected while our industry-leading AI analytics take your business to the next level. We provide the tools you need to understand your customers and optimize every interaction. Choose Inbound for proven expertise and unmatched innovation. Visit callinbound.com and discover the difference we can make. Credit card surcharging sounds effective, but is the single most damaging action to your shop in the last decade. If you're surcharging, you're tarnishing your reputation and losing customers as we speak. Express is the only 0% fee option to surcharging that your customers already know how to use. No tricks, no hidden fees, just a smarter way for auto shops to keep what's yours and do right by your customers. Book a free consultation with Express today by visiting myexpress.io and see how the most successful shops in the country are flipping the script on credit card processors. Okay, we're back. Thank you so much to our sponsors who make this show possible and enable us to bring you topics like this that I think will be helpful and relevant. The word of the day today is adroit, which is an adjective that means clever or skillful in using the hands or mind. Perfect word for our professionals in the aftermarket and in auto repair in general. I will say this, though, no matter how adroit you are, it is probable you will make many mistakes. Now, I'm a big fan of history, and I like to dive into historical topics. Pretty much history, airplanes, rucking, that'll sum it up pretty well for me. We'll have a good time talking about that, and maybe we dive into some theology too. But here's the thing. George Washington quote, one came to mind as I was preparing for this episode, and I'm going to give you the quote because I think it's a good one. You should probably recognize it, especially any of you who have seen the Hamilton Broadway production and you see the farewell address scene for George Washington. This really interesting quote, and I'm quoting here. He said, "Though in reviewing the incidents of my administration, I am unconscious of intentional error, I am nevertheless too sensible of my defects not to think it probable that I may have committed many errors." All right. So Washington's farewell address, I just quoted that. That's penned by Alexander Hamilton, which is why it's in that production. Also of note, James Madison also was one of the authors there. Not as much as Hamilton, who evidently very much liked to write. But I thought this was interesting for a couple of reasons. One, just in our age today, taking a George Washington quote, pulling it in the future here. I think it's important to note George Washington used AI in that farewell address drafting. And that's artificial intelligence is not the word for them. It was actually authentic intelligence, thanks to James Madison and Alexander Hamilton. But to make it properly, George Washington did take the transcript and pen it in his own hand. So, hey, very similar to how things go today, I think, in our newly AI charged world. We'll see. But here's the thing. I used this quote in this episode as it came to mind as what I thought was going to be a nice sort of example of admission of error from a powerful figure. And I think that's kind of interesting. But when I read this quote again, and I spent time with it, working up this episode, I just realized this is a really comically bad admission of errors. There's no admission at all. There's no intentional error. Of course, no one intends, I hope, to make a mistake, but being sensible of his defects, not to think it probable that I have made and committed many errors, is not saying I made any mistakes whatsoever. You might as well have omitted that section. Cool quote. I'll keep using it. But I think there's a little bit more modern take on this that we're going to want to pull lessons from. And we're going to give George Washington all the credit there. Interesting time in history. Of course, status and stature and not wanting to appear fallible and lots of reasons why he would be the way he is. And posterity did him well. You don't get to have this. We're going to go with another author, Coach Rod Olson. I saw him speak multiple times at some conferences, and I picked up one of his books he wrote. It was called The Wisdom Lunch Warrior. Great read for any aspiring leaders, by the way. So pick that one up too. There's several by him if you pop on Coach O's website. But there was a simple lesson when he was speaking that came out of one of his keynotes, and it was the proper response to a mistake. And it's so memorable. It has really stuck with me. The proper response to a mistake: admit it, fix it, don't repeat it. Love it. Admit it, fix it, don't repeat it. Simple list of 3s. Such a profoundly simple thing that's easy to remember, easy to coach to a team, teenagers, kids, you name it. I think if I recall correctly in his keynote, he even had a plaque in the house, and you can just like point to this as like the rule along with some other values. Really cool stuff. Admit it, fix it, don't repeat it. Now, admit it, to keep this a simple rule of 3s, it doesn't also say admit it and apologize, but that is the element on here that I think is really important. When a mistake is made, admit it and admit that you're sorry at the same time. So I'm going to go further into this now. I haven't mentioned this one in a while. I know our loyal listeners will be familiar with this, but How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, but very specifically, How to Win Friends and Influence People in the Digital Age. Another good read. More modern take on our communication styles today. So I highly recommend it. That's by the Dale Carnegie and Associates with Brent Cole. And look, I picked on a iconic figure in history here, but I want to go to it's actually part 3, chapter 3 in that book. And the title of that chapter is Admit Faults Quickly and Emphatically. Emphatically, of course, without doubt in this case, not just the powerful emphasis of the word, but without doubt. So I'm going to quote from that book here. What all of us at one time or another forget is that there is a certain degree of satisfaction in having the courage to admit one's errors. It not only clears the air of guilt and defensiveness, but also often helps solve the problem created by the error much quicker. This is so true. Now, I'll tell you this, auto repair story. I grew up in auto repair business. I'm intimately acquainted with the devastation of simple errors. We were transmission specialists too. I could probably make an entire episode of stories of things that went horribly wrong. It might be very interesting. I'll probably have to have my brother back on and we'll do some talk on that. In one particular case, I can't remember if this one involved my brother or one of our other technicians. I was managing at the time, and I had the pleasure of having a neighbor who was bringing their vehicle in for what was thankfully a minor repair. Is actually, I don't remember the vehicle exactly, but it was a 4T65E, had one of those pressure control solenoid issues, accessible through the side cover on those vehicles at the time. So it's sort of a major minor repair in our transmission world. Some of you familiar with that generation of transaxles will remember this. And you'll also know there's this rubber gasket on the other side of this pan. And if you're in the Michigan area like I am and you understand rust, getting the bottom torque bolts off of that side pan, a little bit of a hassle sometimes, and took some percussion. And so technicians would typically tap like a brass hammer on their extension to get their Torx bit to bite in those bolts and be able to break them loose just enough so that they come out. We would typically always replace that gasket on the other side of this pan too. But unfortunately, in a few rare cases, those aluminum covers on that transmission would have this small little fracture, invisible to the eye and slow to leak, to evade our quality control process. And neighbor's car, you can see what's coming. It, of course, was this scenario, and that vehicle developed a leak. Always an embarrassing thing, and it gets worse. My kids were young at the time, and so we're pushing our family in the stroller up the street, and our neighbor lived just up the road from us. And of course, there he is, pressure washing his brand new, poorly poured cement driveway, recently poured. Hey, how's it going? Good. This was horrible. This is the most embarrassing thing. I hated working on neighbor's car, and I think this was the last time, fortunately, for this neighbor we did. But you can see where it's going. The leak wasn't huge. It was just a small, like less than even the size of a coffee cup, really, on his brand new driveway. But it was a brand new driveway, and automatic transmission fluid totally stained it. I don't even know. I'd have to go walk by today, see if it's finally faded. This was years ago. The apology had to be quick and sincere in those sort of cases. And emphatic is exactly what it was. There's no excuse for it. I could explain all the technical details of why that's hard. I probably did. As I recall, I probably made more of an explanation of it technically than was even necessary. All you can do, admit it, fix it, and hope it doesn't leak again, especially on the new driveway, but maybe park it on the street just in case. No, tough scenarios. And we face this all the time. But that's an easy one where it was easy to admit the mistake. And that isn't always the case in the auto repair business. A lot of us are running into situations where someone's very upset and they may be accusing you of something you have not done wrong, or maybe something just went wrong. It wasn't necessarily your mistake. It was just a bad part or some other scenario. And there is a tendency to become very defensive in these situations, and it is unnecessary. It is completely unnecessary. All you need to do is say, you're sorry about it. I'm so sorry about it. Move on, admit the issue. And if a technician's responsible and they can admit it, fantastic, not important. Service advisor, you're meeting the people in the public, you're going to be the one that's admitting the mistake in most cases. It's just that way. And it makes it so much easier to just move past any of the frustration that undoubtedly every client is well justified to have when they're faced with an inconvenience, and we move in. I want to go back, though, to the Carnegie book. There's a couple more pieces in that chapter that I thought were really effective. And I've picked on a president early in this. So George Washington will pick on another one, Ronald Reagan. In the book, and I'll quote here, Ronald Reagan was known as the great communicator because, to the joy of his supporters and the consternation of his critics, he could move from a place of defensive weakness to undeniable strength with a simple quip. One of his tried and true methods, and I'm quoting still here, an easy familiarity with the apology. During one particular rocky patch of his presidency, he poked fun at his own White House, conceding, "Our right hand doesn't know what our far right hand is doing." Still quoting, Reagan knew it was easier to bear self-condemnation than condemnation from others. When we recognize and admit our errors, the response from others is typically forgiveness and generosity. And thank goodness, that was what I enjoyed too with my neighbor. That was not my neighbor for too many more years after that. I wasn't sorry to see them leave, in the sense, not because they were a good neighbor, but because, man, that I couldn't ever stop thinking about that case, despite the fact that they did forgive and were very gracious. Now, tying in our word of the day, adroit, I would consider what an adroit apology might look like. And there's a few bullets to this that I think are relevant. One is that apology and admission must be specific. It has to name the actual mistake, not just that vague errors, like maybe I made many errors type of thing, like we talked in the original quote. It has to be specific. We made a mistake. There's a leak. It's very simple to say, hard to admit, hard to do. I get it. But then there's the personal ownership, like statements that say, I allowed this to happen, or I didn't catch this, or some other thing. Now, technical issues, service advisors in particular, as you're coming face to face with the public, I understand that those I statements get a little bit more difficult, and it may not be you who did the thing. So just like, I am so sorry is typically enough. I should have verified further, or something to that estate. And saying mistakes were made or generalizing on some of these other things, it's sort of a passive thing, or like, we need to be better than that. Fair in those cases, it really, really is. But I feel like it's just always better if you were the representative going into it and you've been their conduit of communication and representative of the business, continue to just own it. And if you're having a hard time with that, or it's not going well, there's escalations to ownership, actual ownership, and beyond. But if you are the owner, buck stops with you anyways, and it's real easy for you to say, I allowed, and this is on me, right? But then show understanding of the consequences. So this would be the third bullet point. We've been specific about the issue. We've accepted personal ownership of it. Now, showing understanding of the consequences. You have to acknowledge the real damage done. And for my neighbor, this was really simple. I am so sorry about the consequence of your driveway. No, we did not pay for anything on his driveway on this. Incidentals are something that we did not cover. And truth be told, that would be, where would you ever draw the line if that became the case, even on simple things? A quick way to bankrupt yourself potentially. Now, does that mean you couldn't do something like that? I mean, you could, but golly, guys, yeah, I don't even know. Today, I think one of my neighbors just spent like $20,000 pouring a new driveway. It's absolutely insane what that stuff costs now. I can't even imagine. But you understand the consequences, and you can just simply speak to that. And we'll go further into that here in a moment. But The key that I think I was the slowest to learn is this fourth bullet point, that you can explain what went wrong, but without excusing. You must show that whatever happened. There was a reason it happened. Obviously, it's not malicious, not trying to ruin a driveway. We're also not making excuses out of the situation. It's like, oh, you don't understand. This is really hard stuff we're working with. And this thin case pans that they have on these things from General Motors, boo boo. Nope, nope, no excuses there. If you're aware of all those issues, then we could have been a more patient in the quality control process and watch for it with a closer eye. All those different things come into this. The last point is to be forward looking. Talk about, if necessary, what changes will be made to prevent this sort of thing in the future. And there are usually several examples on that. I know for a fact that, especially after that case, neighbor stories have a way of changing quality control processes for the better in our shops. This one definitely caused us to consider our processes and techniques, even on how we remove stubborn, rusty bolts on some of these vehicles, and how to inspect more closely for what we knew was an edge case, but is a case that could occur on those things. So that's that, right? This is a pretty simple topic in many regards with personal accountability here, but I'm not done having fun with this topic yet here, because, one of the challenges we had with our CEO at AutoFlow, Chris, has challenged us to leverage AI. And all know my opinion on AI. I think there's some cases to be made on why it can cause us to be a little lazy in communication these days if we're not careful. But boy, is it good with data and good for research and makes you faster in a lot of things. So you can focus on what you want to do. And I'm making some valuable lessons and learning that I'll look forward to sharing in the future. But I had fun with it. In this particular case, I like Claude by Anthropic. It's a pretty good one. So I took George Washington's quote and I asked a simple prompt here for it to make a more adroit apology using George Washington's voice through Alexander Hamilton in the style of Ronald Reagan in the modern day for something that George Washington made a mistake for. And we chose the Genet affair. For those of you, there's a French guy that came over and he was trying to get us embroiled in a war with Britain, and Washington was too slow in shutting that guy down as one of his only mistakes that he really admitted privately, never apologized for until now, where AI gave the voice of Reagan to this in a comical way. And I'll read you what it prompted here with a little massaging from me. It said, "My fellow citizens, in the Genet affair, our administration displayed all the decisive swiftness of a congregational committee. While this French envoy commissioned privateers on American soil, we responded with typical urgency, the kind reserved for selecting drapes. We were so determined not to offend Britain or France that we managed to annoy them both. Even I, with my talent for creating enemies, hadn't achieved such efficient diplomatic failure. I've learned that when foreign ministers threaten to bypass the president, the proper response isn't, let's ponder this for months. Now we handle crises with at least the speed of a well-run tavern." And AI quote. See, it can be fun, folks. It can be fun. And I thought this was actually kind of a funny way to blend some interesting minds. But here's the thing. All right. Fun with an adroit apology, AI, yippee skippy. I do want to point to a previous episode we did with my real friend, Dennis McCarran. Episode 31, we talked about APAC, APAC. The apology is one thing, but that response is another. And in customer service, APAC is that acronym that I've learned to apply to just about any scenario where you are dealing with someone who is upset. And it is with extreme respect. This is influencing the situation, not manipulating a situation. A in APAC is for acknowledge. P, probe. A, again, for answer, and C, confirm. And as Dennis mentioned in episode 31, the fact that it's APAC is more so that it can have a nice acronym word. A and C, the answer confirm phase, is kind of one step. So acknowledge. Mr. Client, I'm so sorry about this. I understand that the leak occurred and it's ruined your brand new driveway. This is terrible. Let me know. Is this the only issue that you have? You need to probe, right? You need to probe for what the problem is. You need to probe for what the solution will be and what we can do to address it. Answer and confirm is just about how we address it. And you can take any ownership and apology, turn it into APAC, and you can resolve a situation so much quicker. It is among the most mature forms of communication and leadership that you can practice on a day-to-day basis. And while I know it's extremely difficult in scenarios where you're in a chaotic environment or dealing with sometimes a very heated exchange with a client or something that is just really unfortunate, and God forbid if there's been injuries or other horrific consequences, our shop very, very blessed never to have had a scenario where a client was injured or there was any potential for injury and any of the mistakes that I bore witness to. There's some scary things though when things break down. And I know a lot of you out there have experienced some real trauma on those things. And you'll want to be even extra careful in your communication in those cases. But ownership, emphatic apologies go a real long way. So I hope this is helpful for you. And I hope you had some fun with me today too, driving through history a little bit into the shop as well, and some fun stories on top of it, a little bit of everything here. I do appreciate your thoughts on anything that you find helpful. So please do reach out to me here at speakup@craigoneil.net. O'Neill, 2 L's. Only hard part about that email address, speakup@craigoneil.net. I probably should just make another domain with the 1L version and a few others, and that'll help a few of you. That's okay. But hey, I do want to hear about topics that are interesting to you. Any comments or questions you have, stories you would like to share when an apology was maybe difficult, or maybe we'll have some more discussions on stories from the shop on things that go wrong too and how we communicate about them. But please reach out and please listen to the other shows on the Aftermarket Radio Network. Remember to listen up to Remarkable Results Radio with Carm Capriato. Can't wait to see him. I will be, by the time you're listening to this, actually the week, I will be there at ASTA, hopefully hanging out with several of you, seeing our friends there in Raleigh, North Carolina. Then you also have Diagnosing the Aftermarket, A through Z with Matt Fonsel, recent guest. Absolutely awesome time. I had him on the show with my brother as well. Good times there. Take a listen to Matt's show, and maybe one day he'll even invite me to go on his if he can plan ahead even for a minute. It'd be great. Business by the Numbers, Hunt Demarest, the Auto Repair Marketing Podcast with Brian and Kim Walker, great hiking partners in the mountains of Utah at the recent Mars conference, by the way. Such a great time. My wife got to meet them too. Good times all around with Brian and Kim. And then Coach Chris Cotton, who I have not seen in too long, and I have to make every effort to remedy that. Listen to his weekly blitz. Great wisdom from a wonderful man. So please take a listen to those shows. There's some great things ahead on the Aftermarket Radio Network. So stay tuned for some updates there. And thank you so much for our sponsors again who make this show possible. Thank you for joining us. Now get out there, please listen up, speak up, fess up, own those mistakes, and apologize. Have a great day.
You've been listening to Speak Up, Effective Communication with Craig O'Neill on the Aftermarket Radio Network. Follow Craig on your favorite podcast listening app and on his YouTube channel. Let him know what you'd like him to speak up about. Craig is all for advancing the automotive service aftermarket.